Thank you for inviting me to come and talk to you today. So I'm going to talk to you a little about some of the research that we're doing at Birmingham University, looking at the immune system in ovarian cancer. So first of all, I'll just briefly explain what I do. So I'm what they call an academic clinical lecturer, which means my job has two parts. I work at the Midland Metropolitan Hospital, the old city hospital, as a gynae cancer doctor, training to become a gynae cancer surgeon. And I do that for half of my time. And then the other half I do research in the laboratories at Birmingham University, looking at ovarian cancer specifically. And as Victoria mentioned, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the support that I had received from Overcome several years ago. And this all started during my training pathway. I decided that I wanted to have a career as a gynae cancer surgeon. During my obstetrics and gynaecology training, I met Professor Keogh, who some of you may know. And he had a big research team at the university, and he said, would you like to come and do some research in the labs? We have some funding from Overcome for a couple of years to train you up as a scientist in the lab. And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. I can work in the labs, look in the microscope, look at the cells, do something a little bit different to medicine. And I completely fell in love with it, really enjoyed it. And then from the 2 years that I spent as the Overcome Fellow, I was then able to do a PhD in ovarian cancer, funded by the Medical Research Council, and then go back into my clinical training, working 50%. So I've done that since 2023, kind of doing clinical work and research, and kind of linking the two things together. So I work with the Birmingham Gynae research team, and this is led by Professor Sunder, who's going to come and talk to you later on today. And we are a team of doctors, pure scientists. Some of us do a little bit of both. We have statisticians, immunologists, epidemiologists, a big team of people all working together looking at ovarian cancer. And we all do something slightly different. So my kind of focus now is looking at the immune response, the immune system in ovarian cancer. But each of us does something slightly different, and different types of ovarian cancer. So we've got an expert in mucinous ovarian cancer, and kind of different subtypes that we all focus on. So this is the team, this is some of us in the lab, and then this was us at the House of Parliament a couple of months ago for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Week. And I think Professor Sunder's kind of really building up a big team here in Birmingham. So the research that we do is very patient-centred. We see our patients in the clinic, in the theatre, and we're able to pick out the problems, find out what we're lacking, what do we need to improve. And then we take that problem into the labs, into the university, to try and find ways to improve things. So we have like a bedside to bench, bench to bedside motto, that what we're doing research-wise, we want to be able to use directly to improve patient care, improve the treatments and the tests that we have. And we have a very strict no animal testing policy. In the laboratories we use patient samples, so we use blood tests, tumour samples in the laboratory, and use those for our investigations. We feel that using patient samples allows us to kind of see the disease as it is rather than in animals or just in cell lines. We're able to kind of see it reflects perfectly what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve by using the patient samples. So we recruit all of our patients from the Midland Metropolitan Hospital and the city hospital and clinics, and invite everyone with ovarian cancer having an operation, we invite them to take part in our research. We have lots of national and international collaborations. These are some of the institutes that we're working with in the UK. And then at the moment, these are some of the other charities that are funding our research. So moving on to my research, ultimately the overall aim is to improve outcomes and then survival of women with ovarian cancer. The work that I was doing as the Overcome Fellow was looking at new treatments, trying to overcome chemotherapy resistance, trying to understand why chemotherapy stops working for some patients, and going right back into the lab, look at the very basic science as to what's happening in the disease that makes chemotherapy not quite so effective for some ladies. And then now, most recently, I'm looking at the immune response in ovarian cancer, working with world-leading immunologists at the university. So one of the things that we've looked at for a few years is something called the hedgehog pathway, which is a specific mechanism in ovarian tumours that sometimes allows the benign lumps in the ovary to develop into cancers. We're trying to understand the process involved here. And we found a drug that can be used to inhibit this pathway, to basically stop the ovarian tumours from growing. And we found that we can give it alongside chemotherapy to make the chemotherapy work better. So it kills the cancer cells much quicker than when the chemotherapy is given by itself. And this was all done in the laboratory using a drug that's already available. It's a drug that's used for something else, costs pennies, and it's already out there, it's already marketed. So it's trying to make use of other medicines that are already available that we can use to make chemotherapy more sensitive and get better results. And so this was funded by Overcome, and from these results there are other teams in the university and in the country kind of taking this to the next step to see how they can take this further. I've also done a lot of work looking at the specific genes that make the chemotherapy resistant. We know that in one ovarian tumour, it's made up of lots of different types of cells, cells that are very different to each other, and some of these cells will respond very quickly to chemotherapy and be killed off instantly. Others behave differently. They may not be killed off. They may take a lot of time, several cycles of chemotherapy to be killed. And so we've gone right back to the science of understanding the different types of cells within one single tumour, how they're behaving and why, to see if then we can work out the combinations of treatment that would be needed to completely kill everything, if that makes sense. So to do this, we use biopsies from our patients in theatre, we grow the cells in the lab, we then split the samples into millions and millions of individual cells, and we're looking at the genes, the mutations in each individual cells, each of those individual million cells, to try and figure out which ones are resistant to chemotherapy and which ones are not, to try and help improve the treatments that we can give, and know which kind of what the right combination would be for patients. And then, so now moving on to the immune response to ovarian cancer, which is what I've focused on for the last couple of years. We know that when somebody has a cold, a virus, any kind of infection, any inflammation in their body, the immune system mounts a response. The immune system wakes up and starts to attack and try and fight that virus or whatever germ it is that's making you sick. The immune system is the one that overcomes it and defeats it. We also believe that in cancer the same thing happens. So if you have a cancer, the immune system is switched on, it recognises there's something not quite right, the immune system tries to attack it and fight it the same way that it would with the flu, any other virus, any cold. Tumours are very clever, and they found ways to hide away from the immune response, all that immune attack. They found a way to hide, they found a way to kind of buffer it away and be resistant to that immune attack. And what we're trying to do is figure out what the tumours are doing, how they're avoiding that immune attack, and if we know that, we can then manipulate the immune system to overcome it. We can find ways to make the immune system work again. And that would be another kind of treatment, another way to target the cancers. So to start with, we're looking at the amount of immune cells that are present in the blood and tumours of patients with ovarian cancer. We're looking at the way these immune cells are behaving. We want to know exactly where they are. And we've actually found that tumours kind of build a barrier around the tumour that kind of stops all the immune cells from getting in. So we're trying to understand what's in that barrier, what can we do to break through to allow the immune systems to get in. And then trying to look at how we can stimulate and wake up the immune system to fight against it. And so I currently have 3 different projects running looking at the immune system. The first is focused on low-grade serous ovarian cancer. And this is a type of cancer. It's not quite researched as much as high-grade. It's not as common. And we find that there's not as much known about low-grade serous cancer. And it tends to affect younger women as well. So I was quite passionate about trying to start up, trying to find what we can do for these ladies. We find that they don't always respond to chemotherapy as well as the high-grade cancers, but they have a lot of immune cells. They have a lot of immune response. There's a lot of immune activation in this type of cancer, but something's not clicking. So we want to find out what's going on. So we recruit our patients with low-grade serous ovarian cancer. Lots of these ladies will have lots of ascites, which are full of immune cells. So we take samples of their ascites. We're looking at the blood and the tumour samples, and looking at the types of immune cells in those samples, and then trying to figure out how we can make those immune cells fight and attack the cancer. We think that some immune cells will be linked to the chemotherapy not working. We think that if we can switch on the immune cells, switch on the immune system, it will also work with the chemotherapy. So we are trying to understand those patients that respond well to chemotherapy, what's their immune system doing? Those patients that don't respond to chemotherapy, what's different? And then trying to figure out how we can change that to help better improve the chemotherapy sensitivity. And that will then help us guide our patients as to what treatments we offer them and how we counsel them. As I said, we want to be able to switch on the immune system, we want to predict who's going to respond to treatment, and then ultimately develop different pathways of treatment for patients depending on what's happening with their baseline immune system. The next project I'm looking at is high-grade serous ovarian cancer. And we know that a lot of these ladies will present with late-stage disease. We do have some very good treatments, but we have a small number of treatments available compared to lots of other cancers. Lots of other cancers have immunotherapies, different drugs that we can use alongside chemotherapy. We're not quite there yet with ovarian cancer. So we want to understand how we can use immunotherapy in these high-grade serous ovarian cancers. Interestingly, we know that PARP inhibitors switch on the immune system. So the patients that respond well to PARP inhibitors should have a very active immune system, but we want to know more. We want to understand how the PARP inhibitors are changing the immune system, so that again we can better treat them and see if there's an immunotherapy that we can tag on to the PARP inhibitors. So we know you have a PARP inhibitor, it switches on your immune system, and those immune cells can attack your cancer cells. We don't quite know how the immune system works based on BRCA status and the different mutations that you have. So with our research, we're looking at, we recruit the ladies with high-grade serous cancer, we look at their different mutations, we look at their BRCA status, and we're looking to see how their immune system differs, and when they respond differently to PARP inhibitors, what that's doing with their immune system. So it's kind of going right back to the beginning of understanding the basic science that will then allow us hopefully to make change. The other area for these ladies is what we do if the disease comes back. So they've had their surgery, had chemotherapy, had their PARP, their BEV, and they could be fine for a period of time. If the disease comes back, some patients will have a repeat surgery, some patients will have further chemotherapy. But that treatment decision is often not as clear as the first treatment decision when you're first diagnosed. We're not always sure what the right thing to do is, whether surgery or chemotherapy or additional PARP inhibitor is correct. So we're looking at the immune system in these patients when they occur to see if that can help guide us. Is there something there that will tell us they're going to respond to PARP? So you're giving a PARP inhibitor would be very good. Can we find something that will tell us actually PARP inhibitors in this case, or this chemotherapy wouldn't be good based on this immune finding, and therefore surgery is the best answer. So it's hopefully to guide us in that difficult decision. When we go through the list of options available, we want something to guide us as to what could be the best treatment. Which then leads me on to the third project, which is again looking at high-grade serous cancer, but for those patients that have HIPEC. And I know Mr. Blake is going to come this afternoon to talk about HIPEC. He's our HIPEC expert at the Midland Metropolitan Hospital. But there's also a very interesting immunology response with HIPEC. We know that HIPEC is heated chemotherapy that helps to kill the cancer cells. But also we found that HIPEC switches on your immune system. So those patients that are given HIPEC have a surge in their immune response, all their immune cells become very activated after they've received HIPEC. And we want to see how we can work with that kind of surge and activation in the immune response to see if we can kind of jump on the bandwagon and kind of keep it going, so that will hopefully then better target the cancer cells. So all of our patients that have HIPEC are invited to join the studies. We take a small sample of the tumour sample when it's removed, and we take blood samples before HIPEC, after HIPEC, and then a month down the line, so we can understand what the HIPEC has done to the immune system. And then we're hoping when we get the results through, we'll then be able to kind of see, is there something in the immune system that can, right at the beginning, that will predict who's going to respond well to HIPEC, which patient wouldn't respond well to HIPEC, so therefore we can avoid them going through that procedure if it's not going to benefit them. And then also kind of help with monitoring after their surgery. And our aim is with making links with the QE hospital, where lots of our ladies will go and have their chemotherapy. So we're starting to introduce ongoing research blood tests after their operation. So over months, years, when they're seen in clinic with their oncologist, when they're having chemotherapy, we want to be able to keep track of their immune system to again see what's happening with their immune attack. And our overall ambition is that we will be able to introduce an immunotherapy, some kind of drug that can help the immune system fight the cancer cells. And like with other types of cancer, that will likely be in combination with chemotherapy, with surgery. And it's about being able to give like a personalised treatment, because we know if you have flu, one person might be bed bound for a week. The next person might just have a sore throat for a couple of days. Everyone will respond very differently, and it's likely in ovarian cancer you'll respond very differently. You'll need a very different type of treatment. So we want to be able to understand in each person what's happening, and then to give a personalised treatment based on their baseline gene status, their immune system, so that not everybody gets the same treatment. So we're starting to expand our research team at the university to speed up our research, which then obviously will hopefully make change quicker. We're very keen for patient and public involvement. We want people with real life experience of ovarian cancer to help us with finding the important topics to study. What's important to the patients, the relatives, the people involved in ovarian cancer? What do we need to be looking at the university? And how should we be doing our research? So I'd be very, very, very grateful if anybody has any thoughts on topics that we think you think we should be researching at the university. What would be important to you that we can look at to try and make some change with research? What would be the best way to conduct research? The best way to recruit patients. At the moment, we're recruiting patients when they come through the surgery. Hopefully, we're going to have a dedicated research nurse at the QE that can pick patients up in the clinic and try and recruit patients that way. If anybody's got any other bright ideas or anything that would be good. The most appropriate way to obtain samples. So we never take a sample unless a patient's having a sample taken already for a clinical reason. So when patients having their operation, that's when we take a tissue biopsy. If they've got lots of ascites and they're having it drained because they need it drained because they're very symptomatic, they're very uncomfortable, we drain the litres and litres of ascites that's needed, and then we take a small sample at that same time. We would never drain it just for the research. And then with our blood tests, all of our patients need a blood test before their operation, just as routine. So we tag on an extra blood bottle at that time. And then in clinic, when they come back, they'll have their CO125 checked in clinic. They're getting the idea if they will tag on a blood test at the same time. And we feel that's the fairest way. So this is what patients will have lots and lots of tests, lots and lots of blood tests. We don't want to be putting patients through extras. How should we share our results? It's often difficult to know how to reach the patients. A lot of the patients that donate samples to us, they go to their oncology clinics afterwards. We might not see them in the surgery department again, but how could we share our findings with you? We are trying to make links with Facebook groups, talking at events like this, newsletters at the university. We've had suggestions of like the Women's Institute or other like women's only groups that people might be involved with. But if anybody's got any bright ideas about how we could share our results and share our findings, and just how we can involve patients and relatives. Another key thing that we're very keen to have members of the public involved with is when we go back to planning. So when we have to submit grants for more research, so we want to do a new research project, we have to submit forms to charities and explain what we want to do. It's kind of to help with the planning process of that. So if anybody would be keen in being kind of like a spokesperson that we could contact when we have an idea and say, would this project work? What would make it better? What would make it patient friendly? If there's anybody that wants to be a voice and say, actually, that's inappropriate, that's wrong, that wouldn't be, phrase it better. And sometimes just wording the literature that we use to try and advertise and recruit patients, we find is completely changed when a patient looks at it. So if anybody would be happy to be involved in any of our research studies in the planning stages, then again, get in touch and be very grateful. So this is our the whole team involved. So we've got the surgical team, we've got pathologists, the laboratory team, and there's lots more people in the background. But also the biggest thanks is our patients who donate to us. Thank you very much.